Hey guys, it's Buddha Gem, and Luke 12,000 has a new video entitled "The Federal Reserve is a Public Bank," and he's really having a hissy fit about this. But he says some things that I just felt needed they needed a response.
Why is it that people insist on calling the Federal Reserve a private bank? The Reserve is not a private bank. So yes, the Federal Reserve is a private bank.
Wow, it's kind of funny to put those two quotes from Luke together. It's actually closer to the truth. The Federal Reserve System is a mixture of private and public. I would argue it's more private than public, but it's a mixture. It's not an either-or scenario.
NAFTA isn't real free trade. NAFTA is another example of statists like Noam Chomsky demonizing free association by associating words with the exact opposite of their meanings.
Luke, you do Luke, brother, Luke, you do exactly what you're condemning Chomsky of doing within the frame of a couple seconds. How when you're going on a tirade about using language, using it in its right form and not twisting it or using it to mean its exact opposite, how on earth can you refer to one of the most famous anarchists in the world as a statist? You know, you don't. I mean, hello. He's a world famous anarchist, Noam Chomsky. Okay, you can disagree with him, but to call him a statist seems a bit of a stretch. Okay, NAFTA, free association. I mean, you seem so confused about things. Did Chomsky write NAFTA? Did he come up with this idea? Is Chomsky the reason that politicians went from using a usable term like capitalism to a term like free market? Is that Chomsky's fault? I'm going to let Chomsky ring in here in a minute, and you can hear him, because what Chomsky's criticism is, and he explains it, is there is the free market that people talk about, and then there is the actually existing free market that works in the world. There's a world of difference, and to blame Chomsky for NAFTA is just ridiculous. If that's what mainstream politicians are going to call it, blame them. Don't blame Chomsky. How's Chomsky responsible for NAFTA? We're going to let Chomsky chime in here on free trade.
For those who are interested in the real world, a look at the actual history suggests an adjustment, a modification of free market theory to what we might call really existing free market theory. That is the one that's actually applied, not talked about. And the principle of really existing free market theory is free markets are fine for you, but not for me. That's, again, near a universal. So you, whoever you may be, you have to learn responsibility and be subjected to market discipline. It's good for your character, it's tough love, and so on and so forth. But me, I need the nanny state to protect me from market discipline so that I'll be able to rant and rave about the marvels of the free market while I'm getting properly subsidized and defended by everyone else through the nanny state. And also this has to be risk-free. So I'm perfectly willing to make profits, but I don't want to take risks. If anything goes wrong, you bail me out. Okay. So if third world debt gets out of control, you socialize it. It's not the problem of the banks that made the money. When the S&Ls collapse, same thing. Public bails them out. When American investment firms get into trouble because the Mexican bubble bursts, you bail out Goldman Sachs. and the Mexico bailout, and on and on. I mean, there's case after case of this. In fact, of the top 100 leading transnationals in the Fortune list of transnationals, there was a recent study of how they related to the states in which they're all somewhere, you know, so they're all mostly here in some national state. It turns out that all 100 of them had benefited from industrial policies, meaning state intervention in their behalf. All 100 had benefited from the state in which they're based, and 20 of the 100 had been saved from total disaster, that is collapse, by just state bailout. When people talk about globalization of the economy, remember that the nanny state has to be very powerful in order to bail out the rich, and nothing is changing in that regard. 20 out of 100, again, were saved from collapse by this, including a number here.
Now, I'm sure I have some talk by Chomsky talking about NAFTA. I couldn't find it, but I will link to some writings of Chomsky where he makes it clear that NAFTA isn't, and it doesn't have anything to do with free trade. That's a point that's been driven home by numerous people on the left, Michael Parenti, Noam Chomsky, Ralph Nader. To my knowledge, there's nobody on the left that is equating NAFTA with free trade. I've talked about it in videos. I don't believe that NAFTA is free trade, okay? And I think Chomsky, in the clip you just heard, makes it pretty clear that, you know, when he's criticizing free trade, what he's criticizing is the actual policies that are being implemented around the world, that are implemented under the guise of free trade. Now, it's not Chomsky's fault that these people, you know, do these things and call it free trade. Okay, Chomsky doesn't make this decision like, okay, this is how it's going to be. That's the reality. When these politicians pass a thing like NAFTA, they call it free trade. Chomsky's just, I mean, is this clear? Is this, you know, in calling Chomsky a statist, I mean, you talk about being clear with language, and yet look at the things you say, Luke. It's just ridiculous.
Let's keep some meaning in these words. If these words are going to retain any meaning, we have to defend the definitions of these words. They take a word like private institution, which is synonymous with free association, and they demonize it. And they tell you private institutions are unaccountable tyrannies that will lead to the oppression and the slavery of people. However, these public institutions, they're great.
You've got some real balls, Luke. Here you are, a proponent of a completely fabricated tradition that only exists in the minds of a few people who've happened to read enough Ayn Rand and Murray Rothbard to be convinced it's real. A guy, Murray Rothbard, who completely ignores the usage of the word anarchism and anarchy, ignores the history of struggle against capitalism, the 150 years of struggle, and just coins this term out of thin air, anarcho-capitalism, a completely oxymoronic term. And yet here you rail on about this notion that we have to preserve the integrity of words. I agree with you. And that's why I have such a problem with you, because words have no meaning in your videos. You know, that's why I have such a problem with this. I mean, here you've told me free association and free market are synonyms. Now I learn private institutions, another synonym for free market. Does free market mean everything to you? I mean, does it have any meaning whatsoever? How about, since it appears it means everything, why don't you tell me what it doesn't mean? Because, you know, happiness, does happiness mean free market? I mean, do you even know what you're talking about? Free market in our society, I don't know if you live in the real world, but free market in our society, when the politicians, when Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama are talking about the free market, they are talking about capitalism. Okay, that is what free market is synonymous with. Okay, not your utopian dream. Okay, so I don't know. Do you see the irony in this? In that you rail on about the need for us to preserve the integrity of words, and yet you misuse and twist, and I mean, you're calling one of the most world famous anarchists a statist.